For example, what are the key characteristics or indicators of democratic recession? And how do these evolve and manifest themselves globally? What is the state of electoral democracy and election management among the AWEB member countries? What are the implications for the electoral processes of a loss of trust in the political processes, of reduced confidence in democracy, and a loss of faith in governance institutions? And what is the impact of democratic recession on the performance of the electoral management bodies, on public participation, including of citizens who are from the vulnerable groups such as women, youth, people with disabilities, internally displaced persons, and on the integrity of the elections themselves? And indeed, as we have said before, what institutional and policy reforms are required to safeguard the election management bodies in the context of democratic recession? And so, fellow delegates, it goes without saying that nothing succeeds by default. The success of a democracy that delivers better lives for the majority of the people requires that deliberate steps are taken towards such attainment. And one of those steps involves the processes by which the people are able to choose who should govern, and how any mandate is given to or withdrawn from those who are elected. And given their importance in this regard, I'm convinced that the EMB's meeting at this AWEB conference, international conference, must formulate and communicate their collective views about the major issues which attend the challenge to ensure that the people shall govern, and therefore that the democratic recession must be defeated. So, Director of Ceremonies and honored delegates, I wish the conference fruitful deliberations and look forward to studying the rich outcomes of these deliberations, including the plan of action to deal with the identified challenges. I was indeed very happy when I was informed that after a very full day of deliberations, delegates will get the opportunity to explore this beautiful city, beautiful but dramatically varied, and visit various heritage sites. Please take all that as an open invitation, especially to our foreign guests, to come back and see more of our country, both the beautiful and the not so beautiful. And so, delegates, please accept my best wishes to all of you to have a good stay and a safe journey back home to our different destinations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, it would not be an exaggeration that the giant and the stalwart for democracy and the struggle for the rights of the people to govern has spoken. Can we give him another round of applause? I'm not sure that it is a wise thing to have an espresso coffee and then you want to pour milk. I cannot pour any milk now. We've had the espresso from His Excellency, former President Mbeki. Without further ado, let's all thank him for his thought-provoking presentation, and I am definite that his inputs would have an impact and guidance to the deliberations that will follow. And I'm made to understand that Professor Victoria Graham from University of Pretoria will be coming next to chair the next session. And we look forward to contributions that will help us from the fellow panelists that have been lined up. And once again, this marks the end of this particular session. And I'd like to thank all of you for your attention and for having given yourselves the time to listen to the presentation. Please clap your hands for yourself. And if I can have our officials to come over, Mr. Mosori, to come in and guide us to the next session. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Session Chair. I believe we've just arrived here, so we can go to the next session. We do not need a break, and I will invite the next session chair, Victoria Graham, to take the podium.
Okay, good morning, delegates. Very difficult to follow that presentation, but we'll do our best. Okay, contrary to the very spirit and purpose of this whole conference, I'm afraid that I will have to be quite authoritarian in nature as I chair this panel and this session, so I apologize in advance, colleagues, but we have a very packed program, as you know, and we have to be very strict in our time. Right, so I will be very strict as chair. Each speaker will have 15 minutes to present. I will interject at the 10-minute mark. Please, no disrespect, it's all a matter of time. And I will give you a 5-minute warning. And then at 15 minutes, I will cut you off. So sorry again. Following the speakers, we will have a Q&A plenary session, and we will fit in as many questions as we can, bearing in mind, of course, that we will have to have responses from our speakers as well, and we do have limited time. And then we will break for tea. Okay, so this session, the speakers will speak to an overview, really, of the current state of global democratic recession. We have two speakers. I would now like to introduce our first speaker, Professor Larry Diamond from Stanford University, who is joining us virtually from California this morning in the very early hours of the morning, so we appreciate his attendance. And he will speak to theory, origins, and manifestation of democratic recession, and he will have 15 minutes to do so. Professor, I will interrupt you at 10 minutes to indicate you have 5 minutes left, and then we will move on from there. So I'd like to hand over now to Professor Diamond to start his presentation. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, and what an honor it is to be able to speak after a great democratic leader like President Thabo Mbeki, and I thank him for his kind words. I thank you all for your invitation. I'd like to, looks like my slides are up, so let me begin to share them. I think you are showing my slides, so let's go to the next slide. Liberal democracy rests on three foundations. You who lead and management bodies are trying to affirm the first of these legs of popular sovereignty, free and fair elections, political competition and participation that will produce vertical accountability of the rulers to the ruled and government responsiveness to the people. But there are two other very important dimensions as well. Liberal government in terms of protection for freedom and minority rights, and Republican element of good governance with the rule of law and horizontal accountability. I think we can also think of election management bodies as part of the architecture of horizontal accountability, in which there are various agencies of the state that cannot be controlled by the elected elements of the executive branch and have the autonomy to do their job to ensure effective democracy and good government. Next slide. We now have, next slide, a very sobering situation in which we see 6 key trends that encompass the democratic recession that President Mbeki referred to in his eloquent remarks. These include steadily declining global levels of freedom and democracy, deteriorating rule of law in many countries around the world, a wave of illiberal populism that is dragging down democracy and causing democratic backsliding and failure, increasing political polarization and intolerance magnified by social media, which has an incentive to stimulate polarization and disinformation that crowds out honest and truthful information. And I really want to stress, it's one of the things that alarms me, including in my own country, the United States, very serious deterioration in two master norms of democracy that are essential for the organization and successful conduct of free and fair elections and the effective functioning of democracy and the peaceful transfer of power. One is mutual toleration, that each competing political party has a minimum of respect and acceptance for the legitimate rights of other parties and perspectives to compete. And second of all, mutual restraint in the political conduct and the exercise